Welcome to the Best Half Show. This show is all about making the second half of your life 10 times better than the first half. One of the things that I've learned in the past, I guess it's almost 11 months now, of our podcast that we've been running every week, is the people that I've met through the community have been extraordinary. And they all have similar problems and similar issues. And what I've learned is the information is part of the solution. Just learning about, whether it's about diet or exercise or business, like the tips and the information is really, really valuable. But what I learned is what's missing is the accountability. So today, I'm really, really excited to have a very, very special guest. Nicky Billou is a best-selling author. He has 2 incredible podcasts. A lot of my heroes in life have been on his podcast. Nicky's a great friend, and he really he walks the talk. And I think a lot of these best-selling authors and a lot of these speakers, sometimes when you get to know them on a personal basis, they're not exactly sometimes what they seem. Now, again, there are some incredible ones. I got to spend time with Brian Tracy, and that guy, he's the real, legit. He's legit. And there's also ones that just aren't. But I can tell you, based on our dinner last night, we had with Nicky, just an aside, but Nicky's on a very strict diet. So we're in this great restaurant. We're all ordering food. And then Nicky, I don't know if you want to tell them what you asked them to do, but it was like next level. So my point is, Nicky's an incredible resource for us today in the show, and today's about accountability, and it's about why you need a team of men to really support you. But Nicky, I really appreciate you being here today and making the time for us.
Roman, thanks for having me on the show. First of all, it's a real honor to be here, and it's an important topic. And I want to just speak to your viewer. So, throughout history, men have understood that being a part of a brotherhood of other men that you can thoroughly and totally trust is critical to their ability to be successful in the world. And successful doesn't just mean money. Successful means being successful with relationship, with your health, with how you deal with life as it comes at you. And up until about 50, 60 years ago, the mid-60s, this was widely understood. Men were part of gatherings of men. There were men's clubs. There were men that got together in communities. And then the feminist revolution happened, and the whole world kind of went upside down a little bit. And men started to feel, okay, well, maybe what they're saying about us is true. Maybe it is sexist to try to be in men-only groups and things like that. And so they pulled away from all that.
Yeah.
And Roman, you can see what that's done, not just to men as individuals, but to their families and to society as a whole. Like fatherlessness has caused a lot of families to have kids that have drug problems, that have issues with teenage pregnancy, that go to jail over this. Not being around other men to get advice has had men screw up things in their relationships, screw up things in their business, and screw up their health. And what we want to talk about today is we want to come back to first principles, like our friend Mark said in the parking lot to us, right?
Yeah.
And first principles is you gotta be a part of some sort of brotherhood. And for lack of a better term, we're gonna call it a mastermind, right? Because people know that term, they understand that term, at least vaguely. And I think it's a good idea for you and I to delve into, well, what the heck is a mastermind? And as men, why should we care about being a part of one?
So, Nicky, I want to talk about some of the challenges that we have on our site, because I think people don't understand the depth of it. And because of the Best Half Show, the past 11 months, hundreds of people have reached out to me and like, hey, I'm dealing with this. And what I've seen is an epidemic. And I see it with my own kids. When your own teenage kids can't even watch a movie because they're so distracted, they need the 2 screens. Yeah. When people feel like they have no time for anything, but when you look at their screen time, on the Apple device, it's like 5 or 6 hours of just complete nonsense, just regretful time. We're so distracted. And a lot of this has been done intentionally. And then for men, it's much worse. Today, 70% of women are leaving their husbands. And this is an epidemic. And men need to go back to being real men again. And when your wife fell in love with you, you were probably pretty fit, pretty good looking, in top shape. Today, if you look in the mirror, how do you look? And if you think that your wife is going to stay with you, and if you're fat and overweight and not being the man that she fell in love with, You are delusional. This is an epidemic. I have to deal with this almost on a weekly basis. A friend, somebody I know calls me, goes, Roman, I know you've been through this. Like, where do I start with? And well, it starts with your health. Like, let's get you back in the best shape of your life. Because if you don't have your health, you got nothing. So just wanted to get your perspective, because you've got incredible sons. I've had the privilege of traveling one. We went to Florida together.
Yep.
Incredible young man. And then your other son, amazing trainer, and I had a privilege of training with him, and so did Mark Morgan. And Mark said it was like the best training session of his life. Mark's been training like really intensely since he was 13. And for him to tell me that your 18-year-old son was the best training session he'd ever had, I'm like, wow. So you've done a hell of a job. So if we could talk a bit about just as a father, as a family man, like what's going on in the world today?
Well, this whole feminist revolution really took men away from acting like men. And it started to make men feel guilty. Maybe the way that I'm being is wrong. Maybe I am a male chauvinist pig, as they used to put it there, or patriarchy, or toxic masculinity. And the forces that brought this out into the world, which I believe are part of what I call the evil left, they knew what they were doing. They were trying to make men feel guilty so they wouldn't stand up for what they stood up for centuries. And the job of men like you and I is to remind men who the fuck they really are.
Yeah.
At your core as a man, you're a badass and a warrior. You just forgot because the world doesn't want you to remember.
Yeah.
But once you remember, there's a fire that comes up in you that'll make you go out there and conquer worlds, that'll make you go out there and get yourself in the best shape of your life, and that'll make you go out there and take care of business at home and your relationships with your wife, with your children. Like for myself, I went through a divorce. And I thought I was a good husband. I was providing. I was doing everything right. I was in pretty good shape. But in many, many other ways, I was not making my wife feel taken care of. And when my youngest son, he was born with a condition called subglottic tracheal stenosis. In English, that means his windpipe was too narrow. He went to the hospital once for 2 weeks and another time for a month. And the doctors there freaked my wife out. And she came to me and says, we need to have this surgery on him. And the surgery was pretty crazy surgery. They would shove a tube down his throat. They would cut his throat open, knock him out for 6 weeks, expand his throat, add cartilage from elsewhere in his body while he's knocked out, and hopefully he'll recover. There's an 80% chance of recovery. But she was so scared, she thought he was going to die. She says, we have to do this. And I'm like, no. But what I should have done is I should have put my arm around her and said, sweetheart, I get you're really scared for our little boy. And she would have said, yeah, I am. We're going to face this together. And I would have made sure they weren't going to rip his throat open. But that was the way to handle it rather than the way that I did handle it, which is get angry, I'm the man and all that bullshit. And that caused my marriage to dissolve. And my two sons grew up and are still growing up with mom in one house and dad in another house. The stats show the impact of this on kids is beyond screwed up.
It's horrific.
It's horrific.
Yeah.
There's a 600% greater chance of them being charged with a criminal offense in these situations. There's an 1,100 greater chance that they'll drop out of school. There's a 650% greater chance that they're going to be involved in a teenage pregnancy. Yeah. And I could go on and on and on. Unless you do everything in your power to make sure that these kids know they're loved and that you work with their mom to really make sure you're on the same page so they know that it's not their fault, because that's where they go. Is this my fault that mom and dad are broken up? That's what they're all thinking all the time. I, especially when they were younger, went to them repeatedly and said, this was not your fault. It wasn't even your mom's fault. It was dad's fault. It was all on me, because that's the man's fucking job.
Yeah.
You show by example how to do this. And I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons I think my kids aren't pussies.
Yeah.
Because they had their father model this out for them and show them how to do this. And men today, they're not going to figure it out on their own. Roman, they need other men to figure it out. In the parking lot, you and I were talking about this, right? The smartest among us is only aware of 10% of his world. 90% is in his blind spot, right? It's in the subconscious. But here's the amazing thing. You can see my 90%. I can see your 90%. In a group of men, if you're one of a dozen men, the other 11 men can see your 90%. So the shit you're struggling with, that you are trying to figure out on your own and failing, these other fellas, they can figure it out for you in a meeting. And life is beautiful if your ego is not running the show. A man's ego is powerful and important because it's what has him go out there and win. But a man's ego can get him to say, fuck you, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
That's the mistake. If you sign up for a course, if you hire a coach, if you join a mastermind, the worst thing you can do is, I'm going to do this my way. No. You do it their way, even if you don't like it. You know, you were telling me the other day that you signed up for a course we both did, and they told you to do it a certain way, and you didn't.
I was resistant.
And I told you, look, I respect you, but that was probably a mistake because there was a reason they had thought through why to do this, and you missed out on that camaraderie of being with those smelly dudes in that fashion. And I get that because, dude, I like sleeping on my own. Other than a beautiful woman, I don't want anyone in my room. I get it. But for that 4 days, I was with those dudes. There was one dude who snored all night, kept me fucking awake. I was so mad. I want to punch him out. But by the end of it, I'm going, he's my brother. He's my fucking brother. And I'm his brother. And the energy that I got out of that put me into a new space. But this is what I'm saying. When you're with other men, Roman, other men will point out the bullshit that's failing you to you. And if you're smart enough, you'll listen and you'll act on it. And if you're not smart enough, well, then, you know, you're going to stay stuck and you're not going to be where you want to be.
You're right. So it reminded me of last night. So last night we're at a really cool health event, learning some just incredible things. And after I connected with a man I didn't know before, very successful man, and he's doing everything right. Like he's the workouts, the cardio, like he's just doing everything right. But he's got this gut, and he's got this belly, and he's like, I'm just struggling with sleep. And he's like taking CBD, and he's getting himself like high to go to sleep. But when you do that, like it kills your REM, kills your deep sleep, so you're not really getting any benefit.
Nope.
But the guy's working out like crazy, like 5 days, and he's doing all these things right. But he's not sleeping properly. 2, which means his brain isn't functioning properly. It's like being drunk every day, and his belly's there. And so I just asked him a simple question. I said, what time is your last caffeinated beverage? He goes, I have a coffee around noon. And I said, do you know what the 12-hour half-life of caffeine is? He says, no. I said, well, at noon, if you have a coffee, that's like me waking up at midnight, 12 hours later, and giving you half a cup. Like nobody would do that. Nobody. That's exactly what's happening. So sometimes it's just...
and he didn't know this before he talked to you.
He didn't know it, and he's spending a ton of time and money and sleep apnea machines and all this stuff to try to... But sometimes
being discouraged, right?
And he's discouraged. But sometimes you need a man that's been through this. Like I get it. But you need a man sitting beside you, and it wasn't the speaker that had the solution to his problem. It was the guy standing beside him
that cared enough to ask.
Right.
That gives a crap about you as a human being. That's what it takes, man. And you told this guy this. And by the way, the sleep thing is critical because
it's mission critical.
My coach Amber told me, right? Like when I was starting out and I lost a bunch of weight, I lost like 10, 12, 13 pounds. And then I kind of plateaued. And he's like checking with me. He goes, okay, you're eating right. At least you're telling me you're eating right because, you didn't know me too well back then. And you're working out. He said, how's your sleep? And I go, well, I sleep 5.5 to 6.5 hours a night. He goes, that's your problem. I said, what? He goes, yeah, you need to sleep at least 7 hours a night. And at the same time, I wake up, and then he explained all this to me, and then I bought like 11 books to read about it and all that shit. And I found a guy who's like an expert on this, and I want to write a book with him about it, which we've said we're going to do. And then I start to sleep properly. Buddy, the weight started to fall off like that. When you're doing weight loss, sleep is more important than the workouts, more important than the food. Yes. I didn't realize this.
And for your brain, when you wake up well rested, you are just on fire. Your energy, you're motivated, you're productive. All things that people are suffering from. Today, no one's motivated, no one's productive. They just feel it's because of sleep. And again, caffeine isn't the only problem. There's a whole bunch of things. Yeah. But sometimes you need men that are around a room that have a vested interest, want to help you, and you need that information. And it's like you're 90%. It's like the 10%, 90%. The other men will spot it. Go, hey, have you tried this? This worked for me. Why don't you try it? But you need that kind of camaraderie and that team to help you. You know that over 30 years, I've spent $1 million on personal development. I've learned incredible things. But the biggest value is the friendships I've made in those groups. I was a member of Strategic Coach for years. Incredible information. But the thing about information, Nicky, it's all on Google anyway. Like it's all online. It's all in the library. The information is just part of it. It's application, being accountable. So when I see my friend at the next event, I said, hey, I did what I said. I did it. Wow. And what did you learn? Oh, wow, you did that. It's the accountability. And the problem is when you're successful and you don't have a boss and you don't have, somebody to report to you, it's really hard. It's hard to be motivated. It's hard to, especially when you get to the second half of your life and if you've been successful, you kind of get lazy. You're like, I live in like my great house and all this stuff's working for me. And unless there's something like painful in your life, you just kind of get complacent. And the problem is you're either moving up or you're moving down. There's no just like, you can't just be there. There's no stand pat. So it's really important. And I think in the second half of your life, it's mission critical to find a group like that.
It really is. And I'll tell you a story about a man who was in a mastermind that I ran. It was a business mastermind for men called Battle Brothers, and I ran it in 2021. This man owned some restaurants. He owned 2 at the time. And you recall the COVID lockdown era.
Oh, yeah.
And what it did to restaurants, right?
Yeah, destroyed them, yeah.
So he's coming in the group freaking out because he thinks he's about to go bankrupt.
Right.
Whatever he's doing is not working because he was a sit-down, dining in experience, really cool ambiance, all of that stuff, right? And he's telling us, what do I do? And then one fellow in the room sat next to him and said, so this is what you have. He says, I have an idea for you. He said, what is it? He said, you need to pivot from dining in to takeout. Either if your current brand doesn't allow for it because it's known as a dine-in, you need to get into a brand that's a takeout brand. And the guy looked at him and he said, I never thought of that. Like, think about this.
Yeah.
I never thought of that. He was trying takeout in his own restaurant and it wasn't really working.
Right.
It wasn't really working.
Right.
So he started to put feelers out with a business broker to say, hey, I'm in the market for a takeout brand, maybe an older guy who wants to sell and, we can make some sort of a deal. Lo and behold, he found one. And he was able to make a deal. And in 4 months, he made $11.5 million from I'm about to go bankrupt to I'm $11.5 million in revenue, $4 million in profit to the good. In 4 months, from one man sitting next to him and giving him an idea that on his own, he would have racked his brains out to go, maybe I should buy a takeout brand. That would have never occurred to him to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
it was just that little conversation. So one meeting can change the trajectory of our entire lives. One meeting. And sometimes it's not always the people that you think you're going to meet. So we have a mutual friend. Well, he's really your friend, and he's just like a mentor of mine, Raymond Aaron.
Yeah.
I was 14 years old, and for some reason I decided I want to learn about real estate, and I thought I'll learn from an expert. And it was a 2-day course at York University I took. I was 14, and it changed the rest of my life. Like I started buying real estate at age 14, and it's like literally made my life incredible. So that was intentional. I knew I was going to sign up for a program from Raymond Aaron, and I'm very grateful I did. But I'll tell you another example where it wasn't intentional. So I signed up for a course, a Tony Robbins course. I'm maybe 21, 22 years old, and it was a pretty intense course. And I'd already done a whole bunch of Tony Robbins work, but I think it was 16,000 US. Now this is many decades ago. This has got to be like 30,000 in today's dollars.
At least.
And it was a very intense program. And I made a lot of life changes. I became a vegetarian, like a lot of amazing things happened. But the most powerful impact, Nicky, you ready for this? So we have this break and we're outside, it's in Hawaii. And like we're eating this vegan stuff, like we're eating like salads. And this guy comes up to me, goes, hey, can I sit beside you? I'm like, yeah, sure, come. And I said, how are you finding the seminar? And he goes, oh, I just got here. I said, oh, that's weird. And he says, no, I'm a speaker. I'm like, oh, what's your name? He says, Frank. And I said, Frank, you look familiar. He goes, yeah. I said, what's your last name? He goes, Frank Abagnale. And then I just started like shivering. When I was 10 years old, the first and maybe the only book that I ever bought at 10 with my own money was a book called Catch Me If You Can. And it's about this 16-year-old boy that didn't know his parents were having issues. And they bring him into a courthouse. And the judge says, who do you want to live with, your mom or your dad? And he freaks out and he runs out of the courthouse. And he does some crazy stuff. That book, what it taught me was it doesn't matter how old you are, you can do anything you want to do. So I'm telling him this story, how his book at 10 probably made me go to the Raymond Aaron course at 14, start buying real estate. And now I'm in Hawaii at this, unbelievable resort. And he starts crying. And I'm like, wow. He says, Roman, you got to promise me something. And I said, what? I said, promise me that one day you're going to write a book. And I'm like, Mr. Abagnale, with all due respect, what am I going to write a book about? He goes, you're going to talk about your experience. Like, what have you learned? Like, he says, because you could change one person's life. So I'm like, okay, so I shook his hand. So years later, we were in the Profit 50 fastest growing companies, number 11, number 13. Like we were killing it. And I'm like, maybe I should write a book. I got something to write a book about now, right? So I write this book, and honestly, I think I can count the number of readers like on two hands. Like this was not a bestseller, okay? It wasn't a bestseller. But what did happen was there's one man that was having a conversation in India with his father. His father was a billionaire in India, self-made billionaire, becomes the largest landowner in India. And at age 30, the father has a conversation with his son. He says, son, we're the biggest in this industry, in this industry, in this industry. Which one do you want to run? You're 30 now, you can run one. And the son says, I want to run the real estate empire. And he says, well, what experience do you have in real estate? And the son says, Dad, you don't get it. It's not about experience. We have things at Google, and I can get the knowledge. So the father says, okay, in 30 days, smartass, come present to me what your plan is. Thank God, Nicky, I had the book on Kindle. So my billionaire, which is now a friend, downloads my book on Kindle. And it's exactly what he needed, like how to sell 367 condos in 90 minutes. Like it was exactly what he needed. So he basically meets with his father a month later, regurgitates my book, and his father goes, my son, you're a genius. You're in charge. So
I love it.
Then he spends 2 years trying to contact me, but because anytime I get stuff from India, I just assume it's spam. I just don't look at it. Anyways, 2 years later, he flies to Toronto. We meet. We become incredible friends. We built the world's first smart city in India that's transformed the lives of tens of thousands of people, like a new standard of living in India that never existed. My most proud work. I was also able to retire at 45 after that. So sometimes, but if it wasn't for that meeting with Frank Abagnale at a seminar outside in the grass, like it changes your life. So you don't know who you're but you got to make the investment. See, yes. I'd made the investment. If I hadn't paid the $16,000 US, which I didn't have, by the way, I did it on an Amex card, and I didn't know how I was going to pay it off. Okay. But because of that, at 21, 22, at 30, I became a millionaire. By 35, I was making $1 million a year. It's because I made the investment in personal development. And maybe you could talk about your investments in personal development, how they paid off for you. As
you were telling the story, it struck me because Raymond Aaron is someone that I've coached, but I've also been in his programs. And a few years ago, he launched a program to teach people how to write books. And I'm a pretty good writer, but I didn't know that I could self-publish a book. I thought that was like horribly expensive and time-consuming. But I attended a course that Raymond had for it. He told me to come. And when he showed me how to do it, I'm like, oh my God, I can do this. And so I wrote a book as a result of it. And it was called Finish Line Thinking, How to Think and Win.
Yeah, I've read that book. It's a great book.
It's a great book.
Yeah,
it's a short book.
Yeah.
And I have not sold a lot of these books. I've given a lot away. Well, let's say it's probably sold and given away around 6,000 or 7,000.
Yeah.
Okay. One fellow got the book and called me. He's the fellow with the restaurant that I told you about a few minutes ago. And he chased me down to coach him. And he sat with me and he said, yeah, I read your book and I need help with this, and this. And I said, okay, great. And then I asked him, what made you decide to call me? I mean, I know you read the book and all that. He said, well, I've actually been listening to your podcast. And my podcast came from a coach who told me you need to start a podcast. And I'm like, I don't know anything about podcasting. What are you talking about? He goes, no, you need a podcast. He said, I feel like you're my friend. You've been talking to me for 2 years.
Wow.
That's what made me decide to call you. This fellow became the first member of that mastermind.
Wow.
I told you about.
Isn't that amazing?
He helped me recruit the next 3 members.
Wow.
And then that's where we grew from there to like 8 solid members and all of that stuff. That business during COVID saved me because my business was events. When events died,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having this mastermind basically allowed me to take off and allowed me to see the power of a group of men who are successful in a mastermind together. And it just lit a fire in me. And I haven't put $1 million into personal development, but I'm close to 300,000 for sure over the years. And every time I made a big investment, it was like a gulp moment for me, like, oh my God, how am I going to come up with this money? How am I going to pay this off?
Yeah.
But every time it paid off in spades.
Yeah.
In spades. And if a man's listening to this and he's going, okay, do masterminds cost money? Well, some of them do, right? There's those that are a group of people getting together, but there's no skin in the game. There's not as much commitment to it. But if you invest in yourself, That's how you get to the next level. One of my coaches taught me this: 4 qualities of elevating your success to the next level. His name's Mark von Muser. You're going to meet him one day. And I want Mark Organ to meet him as well.
I think he's on a program that I'm starting, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to meet him this weekend. Yeah.
There you go, right? So Mark said to me, the first quality the successful have is they are decisive. They're decisive. They don't kick tires. They go, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm in. That's number one. And I think we need to share this at the next mastermind meeting.
Yeah.
The successful, I'm in.
Yeah.
They see it, I'm in.
They make decisions quickly.
They make the decisions quickly.
You can actually judge the success of a man, even in a restaurant, how quickly they can order versus they sit and like ponder. When a man can't make a decision quickly, it determines their net worth.
Yeah, and that's very powerful and very important, and that's part of what we ought to use in our conversations with some of the folks we're talking to. Now that I think about it, but Napoleon Hill, before he became Napoleon Hill, was a newspaper man. He was a journalist. He was asked by his boss to go interview the then richest man in the world, Andrew Carnegie.
Right.
He went to see Andrew Carnegie, had 3 hours with him. The old man took a liking to him and said, Mr. Hill, how would you like to spend the weekend with me at my estate? I'd like to talk with you further. Richest man in the world says, would you like to spend the weekend with me? What are you going to say, Roman? I mean, if Elon Musk asked us, whatever we got going on, we're going to do our best to get out of it, right?
That's right.
So that's what he did. And he said that it was an incredible weekend. And Carnegie talked about the principles of success because, his own story, he'd been dirt poor and he became the richest man in the world through the principles of success that he learned. At the end of the weekend, he said, Mr. Hill, I have a proposition for you, sir. He said, oh, what is it? He said, how would you like to spend the next 20 years researching my philosophy of success? I will pay you no stipend, but what I will do is I will give you letters of introduction to the 500 richest, most successful men and women in the United States. And they will all meet with you based on the fact that I'm asking for it.
Yes.
And then publish my work. And Hill said he spent 31 seconds thinking about it, and then he said yes.
Right.
The rest is history.
Yes. Yeah.
He wrote the books.
Yes.
He became it.
Incredible.
Now, many, many years later, the two men met one last time before the great man passed away. And while they were reminiscing, Andrew Carnegie said, Mr. Hill, I have a confession to make. He said, oh, what is it? He said, all those years ago when I made that proposal to you, under the table I had a watch with a second hand. And I had decided that I was going to give you exactly 60 seconds to make up your mind.
Right.
And if you had not made up your mind within 60 seconds, I was going to pull the offer I'd made to you. Napoleon Hill went, whoa, man, I came really close to being on a completely different life path. And he said, but sir, but why? He's a little taken aback. He said, well, you've been studying my philosophy of success all this time. You tell me why. Put him on the spot, right? And he said, the successful are fast deciders. And he said, yes, before I came to you, I had approached 4 of the most eminent educators in the United States. All of them had said to me either no or let me think about it for a week or two. The ones who said no. The other ones who said, let me think about it for a week or two, didn't get back to him either at all or much later than the time they said. And he said, success delayed is success denied.
Yes.
Success delayed is success denied. Decide quickly. The second is you got to be committed. You're going to suck at things at first. You are going to suck. You have to accept that. A year and a half ago, I'd allowed myself to get out of shape. I weighed 227 pounds. My belly was flopping over my jeans. And I have a very beautiful girlfriend. She's in really good shape. And I felt that this was not right. You knew. It was not a good thing for me to be in this bad shape.
Yeah.
And every year I told myself I'm going to get into shape. Because, I used to be a top trainer, but I wasn't one anymore. And I was lying to myself.
Right.
I got to what you called the point of disgust. Yeah. And I said, okay, I suck at this. I'm going to hire somebody who doesn't suck at this to teach me. And I made another decision. I'm going to do whatever they tell me. And I did. And within 6 months of sucking and being bad at it, I went from being fat to fit. I went from 227 to 169 then. And then later I did a competition and I went down as low as 167. 60 pounds down, 57, I've got 8-pack abs. You said to me,
it's incredible.
Abs are harder to get.
8 times harder.
8 times harder to get
than
than making millions, right? So I was willing to be bad at this.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to be bad at whatever it is you want to get better at and not beat yourself up that you're bad at it right now. Just, hey, that's part of the process. You got to be bad, then you're going to be mediocre, then you're going to be average, then you're going to be good, then you're going to be great. That's how it goes. Thirdly, and we alluded to this, you got to be someone who invests in himself and is coachable. You talked about this. You put $1 million into yourself. I put $300,000 into myself. The most important asset in your life, in your business, is you. If you're not investing in you, you're being business stupid. Businesses invest in their key assets, right? Apple Computer on an annual basis invests between $150 and $400 billion a year into their business. Are they wondering to themselves, should I invest this money? Does this make sense?
Right.
No, they fucking invest the goddamn money.
Yeah.
If you want to be in a mastermind to get better, then you should put your money where your mouth is and pay what they ask. You got to hire coaches. You got to join masterminds. You got to attend conferences. You've got to sign up for courses and buy books. If last year you spent $10,000 on yourself, Robin Sharma said this year you got to triple it to double your income.
Yeah.
So you spend $30,000. If you spent $30,000 last year, this year it's $90,000.
Yeah.
This is super, super important. Investing in you and being coachable. It's dumb to invest in you and not be coachable. I think anybody who decides to put money in themselves and then ignore their coaches or their mentors or their guides' advice is an idiot. Sorry, but you're an idiot. Invest in yourself and do what they tell you to do. That's what's going to get you the results. And then finally, you must be resourceful. You're too busy, get unbusy. You don't have enough energy, get your energy up. Money's tight, find a way to come up with the money. The successful are resourceful. Tony Robbins says, it doesn't matter how much resources you have. What matters is how resourceful are you in the face of adversity.
Yeah.
How resourceful are you? So if a mastermind costs $100,000 to join and you don't have it, get the $100,000. You know the story of how Tony Robbins joined the Scorpions mastermind with Pat Riley and Ray Dalio? Mark Von Musser told me the story. It's a hell of a story. So
Because Mark used to work for Tony Robbins.
Yeah, he was director of coaching and training and sales. Yeah. So he said Tony was invited by Pat to join this, and there was going to be 10 days. They were flying to some island. The cost was $50,000. Now Tony had the $50,000, but he'd have to go and scrounge it up. But the time, 10 days back then, Tony was doing 290 days a year traveling. You know what that's like. You did that too. So he called Pat to try and kind of get himself out of it. And right in the middle, he said, Pat, I don't know. He said, Tony, you don't understand. You've been invited to be in the most exclusive mastermind in the world. These men and women in that group are the richest, most successful, most celebrated men and women in America. You will be the smallest person in the room. This is an honor that you've been invited. You will never be invited again. Yeah. Take the time off and find the fucking money and let me not hear anything else about it, is what he told him, right? Yeah. And he said, okay. Tony went there and he met Ray Dalio.
Wow.
He met Ray Dalio. And he found out that Ray Dalio made $400 million routinely in a single day. Yeah. And Tony busted his ass to make $40 million a year. Yeah. And he said, Ray.
Killed himself.
Killed it, literally.
Tony Robbins, when you go to his seminars, this guy,
hardest working man in show business, brother.
I think they've measured him now. It's the equivalent of running 2 marathons, what he does every day. And he does these 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, insane.
It's insane.
And he's 60.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he goes to Ray and he goes, Ray, I'd like to learn how to do what you're doing. Could you teach me? He said, sure. He said, how do I learn? He said, well, first of all, you need to spend more time with me because this is what I do. And he said, there's something called the law of proximity, Tony. Yes. Who you hang around.
Proximity's power.
Matters.
Yeah.
You said this to me. The 5 people you're around, you're going to be their level of fitness, their level of wealth, their level of relationship.
Always.
So if you want to keep your marriage, if you're married right now, you want to keep your marriage and your 5 best friends are single dudes who go partying, your marriage is done.
It's over. It's over.
Right? It's done. If you're struggling with weight and you're starting to get fitter, but your 5 best friends drink every weekend and eat to excess, you're done.
You're done.
You're done. So Tony understood this. He started to hang around Ray and other people, and within a year, he had his first $400 million deal in a day. Yeah. And right now, Tony Robbins is worth between $6 and $8 billion. Yeah. He was worth maybe a few million before, as a result of becoming resourceful, like he tells everybody, to get and getting into the right mastermind. $50,000 for 10 days with these guys was nothing.
Yeah.
So when you're being said, should I join a mastermind? What's the most important thing to you that's been elusive and out of reach for you for months, years, decades? And you've maybe like resigned yourself in your mind, even though you'll never tell somebody that, but in your mind, you're like, this is not going to happen. Right? That was me with my weight. I was 55. I'm going to be fat for the rest of my life. Until I hired the right coach. But then I was in a mastermind because this coach brought me a trainer who ends up being my son right now. I go to that gym where everybody's jacked. You've been in that gym.
Yeah, it's
everybody's jacked.
It's a gym I would imagine if Rocky was working out.
Right,
That would be the gym you go to.
Everybody's the women are jacked. Women in their 70s and 80s are jacked. That's the kind of place it is.
Yeah.
So that became my proximity.
Yes.
That became my proximity.
Yeah.
So if for you it's, I want to get my company to 100 million and sell it. Or maybe it's, you know what, I want to add 30 million in profit. Or maybe it's like, I want to find the love of my life. Or maybe it's, I want to save my marriage. Or maybe it's, I got to get fit so I don't lose my business and my wife in a divorce at the same time. Because that's a real thing, as you know.
It's the stats are incredible.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
So you make that decision to invest in you and you come up with the resources, time, energy, money to do it. That's when your life will go from tragic to magic. The difference between a tragic and a magic life is a hair. It's a hair.
Yeah. I also want to talk to you about people that may be going through a tough time. So just because you don't have a lot of money right now, this is actually a time to make the investment. I'll give you an example. So our company is growing like crazy. We're doubling and tripling revenue. I'm getting awards and recognition all over the world for this. But the management team seems to like spend more than they should have. And I was off the ball. I'm too busy like driving revenue and getting awards. And I come back to a meeting and they said, yeah, you know, the venture capital money we raised, yeah, we spent it. I'm like, really? You spent that? Because I don't understand. Basically, the company had no money. A lot of employees, a lot of offices. And I'm like, holy shit. It was just like a holy shit moment that, it was 100% my fault. I was off the ball. So I come back and I have a meeting with my fiance. And I said, hey, you know, bit of a problem. I'm not sure how we're going to make the mortgage payments, the car payments, the rent. Like I'm a bit concerned, which I probably shouldn't have had that conversation with her, but I did. But I said, but here's what I have to do. I have to go to Long Beach, California this weekend, and I need to fly to this 4 or 5 day conference at Tony Robbins course. And she's looking at me like I'm crazy. She's like, you just said you're not sure how we're going to pay all the mortgages and all the rents and the car payments and all this. And you're telling me you need to fly across to California to go to a Tony Robbins, which you've already been to. And I said, yeah, I need this. I have to do this. And she's like, okay. I went. And what happens when you're in a group of highly motivated people, they're at a certain frequency. I needed to get to that frequency to go back and to kill, because men are hunters and killers, but I need to get back in that frequency. I came back and I 10x'd my income. I crushed it. I mean, it was at next level for me. The next year, we helped one client sell $1 billion in 1 year, world record. No one, even OpenAI hasn't done that. Like we did things like impossible. But if I hadn't taken the credit card and said, screw it, I know what I need to do. I need to get back to that frequency. I wouldn't have come back. I could have come back and just, maybe we'll just declare bankruptcy. Like you get these stupid ideas in your head. So even if you're watching this or listening to this and you're like, I don't know, I don't have the money. Look, if you got access to credit, you got access to credit card, you got to find a group that's going to take you to the next level and hold you accountable. And the accountability is the key. And if I just talk about that, because if you have a group that holds you accountable, this is the key. So the reason we're able to go from startup $0 to $1 billion in 1 year is we made one commitment to each other. Every morning, Monday to Friday, no exceptions, no holidays, no days off. 8:30 in the morning, we had to meet in a boardroom. And all of us had to go around the room and just say one thing. What did you do yesterday to help us achieve that goal? And it wasn't like, I had a meeting or I sent an email. No. It was like,
nothing bullshit, real.
No. What did you achieve yesterday? What was the one thing you achieved yesterday to help us hit the goal? Because we were all very clear on the goal. And then you had to have that. And then the second thing is, what are you going to do today? Today, what will be your task that no matter what you will do today to help us achieve a goal? That's all we did around the room. And the room grew because we're growing. We went from like no employees to like 200 in that year. But I attribute the success of that business going from 0 to $1 billion because we had accountability. And I was terrified to go to that meeting every day. I'm like, holy shit, like, what did I do? Like, it's hard for us to think about what's the one thing I did yesterday to help me achieve the goal. Like all of us should think about this every day. What did you do today? What did you do today to help you achieve the goal? But when you have a team, I'm not saying you have to meet every day. If you don't want to do $1 billion, don't do meet every day, but maybe once a week. You know, you want to make millions of dollars once a week, but you need a team that are at the same frequency as you. Not our friends. I love my friends. I was, with friends this weekend that I've known since grade 2.
Yes.
And I'm with their kids and their kids. I've watched this amazing. I love my friends. Okay. I'm a very loyal friend, but when I'm with my friends, I can finish their sentences. I might as well be talking to myself. There's no new ideas, my friends. Like we're just like, I know what they are. I need to surround myself with 5 guys that have way more that I have in terms of a better relationship, more money, more success, better relationship with their kids, whatever it is. Because if you don't have that group, you need to go hire it or buy it. Because 99% of the time, your friends and family aren't that group that's going to take you to the next level.
No, they're your friends and family. They love you and you love them. And it's important for them to be in your life and vice versa. But success is about deliberately curating the people around you that'll take you to where you need to go. And the most important thing you can do is to join a powerful mastermind. Period, full stop, end the story.
This past 11 months of being the show, I started looking at different groups. I'm like, hey, maybe I should join a group. So we went together to the Vault conference. That was pretty incredible. I went to Grant Cardone's conference a few months before. I'm always going to learn from people I truly respect. And I really look at that leader and what's their relationship with their wife? What's the relationship with their family, with their kids? What kind of father are they? What kind of husband? That's very important to me.
Me too.
Because they can have money, but if they don't have the rest of the stuff, like I have no interest. Okay, so when I go to these 4 or 5 day, I'm studying these humans. Like, is this somebody I want to follow? Is somebody I want to learn from? And then I went back to groups that I had a lot of success with. Like Tech is an amazing organization in the US. It's called Vistage. And I've done both because I lived in Florida for 5 years. And Tech, great group. And I've met some amazing men, great friends. Actually, one of the guys we had dinner with last night, I met from Tech. I spent years in Strategic Coach. Amazing. These are amazing organizations. But what I found, again, because I've kind of been, semi-retired since I was 45, these groups have changed. I don't know if you follow this, but they become very woke. It's not just that there's a lot of women in these groups, and there's nothing. Listen, nobody loves women more than me, but women and men are very different. Our brains are wired differently. If you do like a scan of a woman's brain, it's like a fireworks show. You look at a man's brain; it's very simple. We are very different. Men are wired to hunt and kill. We have a lot of things that we can't do, but there are some things that we're good at. So when you have a mastermind group and when you have a lot of women in it, or any women, it changes that dynamic. I'll give you an example. I know therapy is really important, and most therapists are women. Most therapy clients are women, and it's perfect because they love to speak about their problems. They just want to talk about it. A man's different. A man they don't really do well with therapists usually because they speak about the problem and they just want a solution, and they'll go execute it. They don't want to just come every week and just talk about the same problem and regurgitate it. It's a different communication. The second problem is this woke thing, where all we do is celebrate victimhood. So this morning, I got a message from Strategic Coach. Which again, I'm a huge fan of Dan Sullivan. I've learned so much. Read his books. This morning, the message was the email and all the social media was like, "Oh, today we're celebrating
Truth and reconciliation."
Yes, and I'm like, okay, I joined Strategic Coach to 5x or 10x my income. I'm not here to celebrate every victim, from 200 years ago. I'm sorry. That's not why I signed up. So the problem with these groups is they're so woke, and what's your pronoun, and you can't speak about other things. Like it's just crazy. So if you join a mastermind group, you got to make sure it's like anti-woke, it's men only, and it's people that are really serious about 10xing their life. And usually I find it's entrepreneurs are really good in that group, CEOs, guys that are, and they've usually had success before. Right? Because a mastermind group isn't good for somebody who's like never done anything in their life and they want to sleep in every day. That's not, you need men that have been successful, but now there's some pain in their life and they want to go to the next level. Exactly. That's the mastermind you want to find.
Exactly. And listen, I've been in masterminds like you with men and women, and I run one right now for thought leaders, and there's strengths to that. There's no question about it. And some of the women in our group are extremely talented and they make a lot of money and they're really good. And there's a place for those. But the problem is right now, most men don't have anything that's masculine only.
Right.
Anything.
Correct.
And that's the problem. If you had a masculine only space and you wanted to be in mixed spaces too, that's great. I support that. Even mixed business spaces. There's strengths that women have. Like you, I love women. I have a beautiful woman I work with. We run our group together. But if you're a man who's listening to this and you know that what Roman and I are telling you is true, you don't have any masculine only influences on you, that's when you got to join a mastermind that's full of men, that's not woke, and that's going to push you out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is where your dreams go to die.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
And the problem with most of our friends is they get to middle age, and that could be for 40, 50, whatever middle age means to you. But most of our friends and family gave up on their dreams. They gave up on their big dreams. And then they just get content or whatever. And they substitute that with alcohol, with drugs, spending all day on food or TikTok or Netflix, where they do. And that's the challenge. So you need to surround yourself with people that haven't given up on their dreams and their goals.
Amen.
And the problem with this woke thing, it's penetrated all of our families. So our poor kids have been indoctrinated in this. And my daughter, which I have the best relationship I've ever had with her. She's 19. I'm her biggest fan. I can't love her more. But I remember she was 16 years old. We're driving in a convertible, and she had all her girlfriends, and they're all singing this Drake song. Like, it's a beautiful summer night. They're singing this Drake song. And I'm like, this is so fun. So I decide, again, Nicky, I don't have a singing voice, but I decide to sing the chorus. Now, this is a top 40 song playing at all the radio stations. My daughter looks at me with disgust, and her friend's like, Dad, you can't sing that. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, Dad, you are a privileged white man. You can't sing that. I'm
What?
like, this is real. This will happen. And I'm like, Katie, this is a top 40 song from Drake that grew up down the street from your grandparents, like in Forest Hill. Like, I'm sorry. This is not like some man that came from some like ghetto. Like, what are we talking about here? But they've been so indoctrinated, and my sons too, they've been so indoctrinated in school, but oh, you can't say that. This has permeated our own families. So to get out of that, and you need men that just don't buy this bullshit, and we know now how the manipulation on algorithms.
Yep.
Like, we could both read the same story, but they've already manipulated like the comments you read versus our feeds are so, like, it's crazy.
It is crazy.
So you need to get with men that understand this is the world we're living in is absolutely nuts. And what I can just tell you, one of my strengths is I'm really good at seeing the future, and it's been incredibly a blessing for business. And for those of you that want to watch like my YouTube videos from 14 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, pretty accurately predict what's going to happen. Like, I'm really good at this. In the next 2 years, okay, and 2 years happens fast.
Very fast.
The entire world is going to transform like we've never seen it. This AI is underhyped. This AI will literally, when I say eliminate, like, I'm talking about like 90% of jobs will completely change. This AI right now, this new ChatGPT 1.0, whatever they call it, it's at PhD level. It's doing reasoning that humans can't even do. Now we have these chat agents. They're literally can do what a human being, what a worker can do. And you can get a bunch of these agents working together. It's like having a team of 5 people. Guys, this is the next level. And some people go, oh, but I used ChatGPT and I got some misinformation. Yeah, okay. That was like last month. Try it this month. The technology, Moore's Law used to be like every 18 months, double. It's now 5 months. I watched Zuckerberg 2 days ago. He said, I can't understand how fast this is growing. Llama 1, which is his first language, he goes, we ran on 10,000 servers. Llama 2, we could run it on 100,000. Llama 3, we're on 1 million. He goes, I don't see a limit to this. Like, we're talking about trillions of dollars of money is being spent in this infrastructure. Sergey Brin, founder of eBay, of Google, one of the smartest humans alive. Since he comes to work every day. Bill Gates is working every day. The smartest men in history are going, holy shit, this is beyond what we've ever seen. So if you're sitting at home and you're like, yeah, AI, I don't know. Like, I think I'll just watch Netflix tonight. Like, are you kidding me? If you're not watching YouTube and studying how it's going to affect you, like, literally there's going to be very rich and then everyone's poor. If you're not on top of this and you don't have the energy to be learning, you're in deep shit. If you love your family, if you love the people around you, this is the time in history. We're going to have AI robots Tesla's coming out with. It's going to replace any manual task. I can't wait to get one. They're going to clean my house. There'll be more Tesla robots sold in 2 years than all the Tesla cars. Guys, the world is changing. If you don't get around a group of men that understand that, holy shit, we need to man up, or we're going to be literally like in the breadline. Like, I don't know if you've driven around Toronto, but we got people lined up everywhere in bread lines. Like, this is real. And AI hasn't even kicked in yet. You just watch in 2 years. So this is your chance to make a massive change in your life, because today you're going to watch this in October 2024. You're going to go either, that was the day that changed my life. I listened to these two men and I took action. Or you're going to go October 2024 and you're going to tell your kids or grandkids, yeah, I could have, but I didn't. And
I wish I had.
I wish I had. I wish I hadn't. So,
or I'm glad I did. I wish I had, or I'm glad I did.
And living with regret is the worst. It's the worst.
It's the worst.
We encourage you to take action today with what you're hearing. You don't need any more information. It's time to take action. And that's our message for you today. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicky. I really appreciate you being here today. Any
Roman,
final
thanks
thoughts?
So my final thought is this. We're going to make sure Roman and I's contact information, emails are in your show notes. Yeah. So if you have a question, if you want to talk about this, or if you're ready to take action and you want to talk to us about that, we're thoroughly thrilled to hear from you. So his email, my email will be in the show notes. Send us a note, please. Be an action taker. Action takers change their lives. Thinkers, let me consider it. Everything stays the same. And like you said, you're not going to stay stagnant. You're either growing or you're dying.
Yeah.
Pick. I wish I had, or I'm glad I did. Yeah. That's
awesome. It. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Again, thebesthalfshow.com is our website, and you can see us on The Best Half Show, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Grandma, are we still on Instagram? I don't know. We seem to get censored a lot. But anyways, we look forward to speaking to you about your goals and dreams. Thank you so much.